Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Ryan with Propelio, sitting with me, Mr. Grant Kemp, for another episode of Grant Teach Me Something. Today we're going to talk about note sales and all things notes, creating notes, selling notes. What is a note? Is it a musical note? Is it a bit, whatever. Anyway, that's what we're going to get into, so stick around. Make sure, if this is your first time watching, if you like it, subscribe, YouTube, podcast, Facebook, etc., etc. Write me a handletter note, whatever. Anyway, stick around. We'll be right back.
Teach me something.
What's going on, everybody?
What's up, Facebook?
Grant.
My name's Grant Kemp. I'm from CreativeCashFlow.com. We help you buy more houses.
Yeah, so what I was saying earlier, if this is your first... If this is your
Ignore it.
first time watching, and if you like what you're seeing, you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. We're on a podcast, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, though Twitter and LinkedIn, I don't think anybody's actually looked at those accounts in a minute,
Yeah.
but that's okay. So we're going to be talking about note sales and all things notes. So let's
let's
jump
talk
in.
notes today. Notes are a really important part of this business that not a lot of people, I shouldn't say not a lot of people. It's just another niche. It's just another niche, a vertically integrated way for you to make more money on each one of your properties. I see people making money in notes all the time. Notes are really one of the easiest ways that I make money, especially with brokering of notes. And if I've ever brokered a note for you, then now you know that that is the easiest way that I've ever made money.
And I think the confusing thing, especially about notes, is everybody's always like, you hear notes and you know about like your deed of trust, and you have my note, I have my mortgage, and then you hear the sub-2 world, then you have the owner finance world, then you have creating notes and selling notes. And I feel like it could be so daunting, but then when you throw out words like, it's the easiest way to make money, it's like, go
wait,
on.
what? Perk.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that you bring that up, because one of the things I said a second ago is that this is a way to vertically integrate and make more money on each one of your houses. That's our job right here. Our job is to make the most money on each property that we can. Let's take advantage of as many profit centers as possible while not spreading ourselves too thin. What I want to preface this by saying is, and we were talking about this before the filming started on a different topic, but don't just automatically assume when you hear something, hey, this is an easy way to make money, that it is just, the easiest way to make money ever, because what's going to happen is eventually you can end up spreading yourself too thin, too many different strategies, and you spend 6 months figuring out that this new strategy that you just heard about is just as hard as the last strategy you knew.
So for those of us that didn't go to college or didn't study economics or whatever, and I know it's probably super obvious, but can you give like an elevator speech of what vertical integration means?
Yeah, for sure. So another kind of way, and this is a rough, this is just a rough way. Another kind of way of saying it is selling the sawdust, okay? That's a phrase that I like a lot, because imagine you're a lumber mill and you are sawing through trees all day, every day to make 2x4s. Well, do you throw that sawdust away, or do you sell it to people who need to sop up oil spills or create barriers or something like that? It's already there.
Right.
Why not make money off of it?
Right.
So vertical integration in our world would be, like one example of vertical integration that you'll see from me right now is I'm launching a servicing company. Well, I'm already servicing my own notes. I already have the staff. I already paid the $20,000 for the software. Why should we not be making money servicing for other people as well? That is a vertical integration. Anything that takes you from start to finish in that line, if you can own that process, you can make money on that process.
Yeah, and I think the most classic sense, or the most classic example of vertical integration, I believe it was Carnegie, and please do not quote me, and please feel free to point out my error and my. But it was like, hey, I own the mines, I own the railroads, and I own the steel mills, and I process the ore to create steel. So that's, and again, I don't know if it's Carnegie, and I don't know if that's the right, but I know that's the classical. It's the mine, the railroad, and the mill.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the easiest way to look at the definition of vertical integration.
So my viewpoint on notes, and a note, just to define that real quick, is just basically a mortgage on a house. One valid point you brought up is like, man, you hear rep, you hear sub-2, you hear mortgage, you hear this, that, blah, 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 blah. What we're talking about is when you've got debt on a property, however that debt is achieved. If that's a mortgage to Bank of America, if that's an owner-financed mortgage that you have done, that mortgage can be referred to as a note, and that note is a marketable asset. I don't know how many of you out there, and comment if you've had this happen when you got a loan on your property, your personal property, within the next several months, if you got a letter in the mail saying, hey, this has been transferred to Wells Fargo, or this has been transferred to Bank of America, now you need to start making your payments there. Comment on that, raise your hand, put a like, put a thumbs up if you've seen that happen, because what was happening is Prime Lending or Bank of America or whoever you originally got your mortgage with sold that note.
Yeah, and forgive me for jumping back on the vertical integration, but it's just like, you said that word, that concept, and now my brain's going, man, that's a whole episode on how to get creative, CreativeCashFlow.com, on how to vertically integrate your real estate business. Maybe that's a future topic that we should just do a full episode on, just getting creative with that.
Yeah.
But anyway, today's topic is notes.
Right.
So
common. Just the short and sweet of it is, you have a mortgage. Now, in our world, that means that we created an owner-financed mortgage, or somebody else has created a mortgage that could be institutional. But I'm going to use, for today's example, I'm going to use the example of we bought a house and we've owner-financed it to somebody else. The reason why I'm going to use that example is that this season of Grant Teach Me Something we are building. This is the process of this season. What we want to do is we want to give you the opportunity to start from episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and actually build your knowledge into a position where you're doing really well for yourself. And this is kind of that next logical step. We talked about some basics. We talked about how to buy houses subject to. We talked about how to sell them with a wrap. Now we're going to talk about what can you do with that mortgage once you've sold it with a wrap.
And again, forgive me if this is just, hey, way too bottom of the barrel.
But let's talk about vertical integration more.
Shut up. What is a note? Like, let's really define what a note is. How do you create a note?
Yeah.
And I know what we're talking about in our example of, hey, we have an owner finance house, we created the note, but define it in a way that the most layman person will know what a note is.
Yeah, a note is a mortgage, right? You know what a mortgage is. A mortgage is debt that you have on the property in order to own that property. Well, we think of mortgages from the mortgagor, the one who has received the mortgage. We think of them from our aspect, right? I got a mortgage on my house. What we're not appreciating is Bank of America is the mortgagee, the person receiving that mortgage. They have that as an asset. That mortgage is an asset, and that asset can make you money in multiple different ways.
So in our world and what we're talking about today, instead of a Wells Fargo, Carrington, a Bank of America, they're the bank in this topic today.
I want you to be the bank.
Kemp LLC is the bank.
Right, you are the bank. You are the one making money on this mortgage. Now, again, that's today's example. We'll talk about how you can kind of broker notes that you don't own, but in the aspect of building, let's get into that. So when we have a mortgage with somebody, right? And again, if you want to learn how to do that, watch the first few episodes. If we have a mortgage with somebody, they're going to be paying us 9.5%, 10% over the next 30 years, which creates our cash flow, right? Which is what we're all looking for. We're looking for that long-term cash flow. But that's an asset. And I think that sometimes people forget that that's an asset in much in the same way as a property is your asset if you are a landlord. I will hear arguments between the landlording and the owner financing side of things as like, well, yeah, but I want to own the asset. I want to have that long term. Well, your mortgage is an asset. That is what you own at that point in time. Now, if you want to make money on that asset in a way other than cash flow every month, you can cash out. You can sell that asset. You can get a lump sum of money right now. And so what this becomes is it becomes a fantastic piggy bank for you. Now, one of the episodes that we will end up talking about in the near future is going to be rules of thumb, how to analyze some of our wraparounds, some of our subject twos, what allows you to say, yes, this is something that I'm going to move forward with. But for today's example, we're going to just use what I usually use of you're getting a cash flow of $350. Maybe I should say $150, but our average is about $350. You're getting a cash flow of about $350 from this property. And what that means is that you have debt on a property somehow. So in red, we're going to show that you owe money to a bank of some sort, a lender of some sort, okay? Now we're going to say a bank. this person that you owe money to may be
Private
lender, might be hard money, might be whatever that is, right? You have to pay money every month for the right to have this asset, okay? So here you are,
Aunt Betty.
you wonderful investor, you. Now, you owe money every month on a monthly basis. Now, what we're going to say is that payment that you're making every month is $650, just for sake of argument. Now, you're going to sell that house with a mortgage to your homeowner, okay? And I'm going to put these guys in green because this is where you make your money. He's got a broken leg. So we're going to say this is Joe, homeowner. And they bought that property from you, owner financed. So every month, can you tell I've drank a lot of coffee this morning? Look at that line. Holy cow. Every month, they're paying you $1,000. Okay?
Which is more.
Which is more. And let's kind of build out a little bit more of what these terms may look like. And these are not going to be, well, why not? We'll make them real terms so that we can show you how to use this financial calculator, because that is very much a part of what we're doing here. So what we need to know is our financial calculator.
10B2.
The 10B2, phenomenal. I have a entire, not episode, but not course, but show thing on the Propelio Academy. What would you call that? Segment on Propelio Academy. If you haven't signed up for the Propelio Academy, go there. It's propelio.com/academy. It's free. I do an entire A to Z on everything you need to know on Subject to Unwraps. One of the segments that I get the best feedback on is teaching you how to make money by using this 10B2 calculator. So check that out. But what we're going to do is we're going to put some terms in here, okay? So I'm going to make this very rudimentary. I'm going to act like taxes and insurance don't exist. I'm trying to break this down to be as simple as possible. So we're going to act like the only payments we care about is the $650 going to the bank and the $1,000 coming in. In the real world, yes, they would have taxes and insurance. You would be paying taxes and insurance. But for today, to learn notes, we're just talking principal and interest. So if we have a note with our buyer that is giving us $1,000 a month, okay, and we've charged them 9.5% on a 30-year mortgage, that means that their note balance would be about $119,000. That's what we have found here. From left to right, real quick review of this calculator, because we're going to get into this more on the note sale. From left to right, at that top row, we've got N, which stands for number of payments. And actually, you know what? Let me do this. I'm going to pop over and give this a little bit better description for you. We have N, which stands for number of payments, not number of years. So notice I said we had a 30-year mortgage and I put 360 in, okay, because it's a number of payments. The next button we have is I/YR. One of the reasons I like the 10B2 calculator is that you can just put in, like I said, we've got a 9.5% interest. We're going to put in 9.5 in that. The 12C, some of the other options for financial calculators, you have to divide your number out by 12. Anyway, in this calculator, the reason I like the 10B2 is that we're doing just straight up, what is your interest per year? Okay, so in our case, that was 9.5. The next field that we have is PV, which really stands for present value. What is the value of this loan today? But you're going to hear me, because of the world that we live in, it makes it make a little bit more sense if we call it the principal value. Okay, so just know I'm saying it wrong, but it's helpful for us to understand. Then we've got PMT, which, can you guess what PMT stands for?
This is payments, and I know this one. You need to make sure this is a negative.
Oh,
is that right?
Great idea to put that here. Always negative. How often is this negative?
Clearly, I've been on the show with you a couple times.
Always negative. Okay, and then finally we have what's called the FV, which is final value. At the end of this loan, what is still going to be due and owing on it? For our purposes, let's always use 0 right here, which makes this really easy for us because it takes out one of those options that we have on the calculator, right? What that's used for is like balloons, that kind of thing, but we're not going to deal with that right now. So the way this calculator works, top row, you feed it 4 of the 5 items on that top row, and it will solve for the 5th one. Okay? So we just solved that we, on this mortgage, to our buyer, the note that we have with that buyer is for $119,000, okay, roundabout. at 9.5% for 360 months. Okay? Now, our payment to our bank that we're making, that $650, let's say, so we're paying $650, I'm going to turn it to a negative, and I'm going to put it in our payment field. And average on our underlying liens, they're like 4.5%, so I'm going to put 4.5%. Average on our underlying liens, it's somewhere between 22 and 28 years. So let's just say it's 25 years, which I know is 300 months, and we're going to solve for the principal. That's a bad example. Let me do this.
Well, that's only 60 months.
Okay. I'm going to try and make this a more obvious lesson for everybody.
Right.
Actually, to make it even more obvious, let me do like this. I'm going to say that we owe $90,000 at 9.5%, which means that we have 195 months or 16 years left on that loan. Okay. So on our underlying lien, this is a $90,000 lien at 4.5%.
16 years.
16 years. Okay, so this is what a wraparound would look like. We're paying every month, we're receiving every month. In the middle here, the profits that we are currently making on a cash flow is $350 a month.
And to spark the obvious, the cash flow is $350 for 16 years. The remaining 14 years would be the full 1,000.
Correct. Now, and please, if you guys have any questions, I always want to be very clear that I want to keep everybody on the same page here. So if you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments. We'll be monitoring that so we can answer them for you live. Just let me know because I want to get these answered. So here's our baseline knowledge. This is what a wraparound looks like. Now, we've got $350 a month. Now, the other thing that we have to appreciate here, and this is what I was trying to make easy and obvious, is that in the middle here, we also have $29,000 in equity. Okay, this is what I call equity in our notes. It's the balance between the underlying lien, which you'll see abbreviated as UL, and what's owed to us. In this case, that's $29,000, and we're making $350 a month.
So before we go too far, right now, obviously the note itself, you're making $350 cash flow for 16 years, and then for the final 14 years, you're making $1,000 cash flow.
Right.
That being said, if you get in a sticky situation when you need to liquidate, you've got $29,000 sitting on the table, ready to go.
Exactly.
And
that money is your money that you can capitalize on. Now, I want to be clear. When you've got a situation like this, the only way that you're ever going to get that full $29,000 is if your buyer ends up selling or refinancing the house. If they paying off your mortgage for whatever reason. In a payoff event from your buyer, they're going to pay what's owed on their mortgage to you, and that's when you get your most capital. That's when you get the most of that equity, okay? Now, small side note, you should know, and I don't want to get into this because we can divert too far, but as time goes on, your equity position gets larger and larger and larger because your underlying lien is being paid at 4.5% and you're charging 9.5%. So you're paying off your mortgage much more quickly than they're paying off their mortgage. So, but to get back to the point here, you'd get your full 29 if they pay it off. Now, if you need to liquidate and get some cash for whatever reason that might be, you can sell this mortgage that Joe homeowner has with you. You can go find somebody who wants these types of notes and sell it to them. Now, when you sell it to them, just like how you buy houses at a discount, they're going to want a discount on that mortgage.
Right.
So this mortgage in this example is $119,000. If I'm going to sell that on the secondary market, which means I'm going to sell that to the people who are looking for mortgages, we're going to take a discount. We're not going to get $119,000. So that begs the question, what do you get? How do you decide what a discount is on a note? And this is the key question that most people have that have mortgages, and really hovers around the entire reason we're doing this episode. How do you evaluate what you might be able to get for a note, and how are note buyers looking at these notes and deciding what price they're going to give you, right? So before we get into that, do we have any questions that have popped up that we might want to resolve?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Cool.
I'll hit you up when we're ready.
Bueno. All right, so if we're looking at selling this note, one way that we can look at our mortgage is that we said we have a 9.5% interest loan for 30 years well, let me do it the right way, which was we've got $1,000 coming in, which meant that our mortgage was for $118,926. Another way of phrasing that is that if I'm getting a $1,000 payment for a loan of $119,000 that has 30 years left on it, that $1,000 payment is returning a 9.5% yield. Okay? I want to repeat that. Another way of phrasing what we just put together on this mortgage is that if I've got $119,000 on the market and it's making me $1,000 a month for the next 30 years, that is returning an annual yield of 9.5%. The reason I bring that up is that the word yield is what throws off a lot of people in the note space.
Okay.
They're trying to figure out, what does yield mean? That's what yield means. You are getting a return of 9.5% on this money that's out on the market. So, when a note buyer is evaluating your note and they're looking to purchase a note from you, what they're saying is they have an internal yield requirement. They need to make their money make a certain amount of money. If they put their cash out, they want that cash to make them 10, 11, 12%. Okay? So to apply that to the phrasing that I just used here, if I'm a note buyer looking at this note and I'm looking to buy it from you, what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a certain sum of money. You're going to be cashed out. You get to walk away. Ideally, you get as much of that $29,000 as possible. And then what's going to happen is we are going to transfer, instead of you receiving this payment every month, your note buyer is receiving this payment every month. I'm just going to put note buyer.
And to be clear, there's several examples here where, I mean, because the obvious is the note buyer comes in and just pays cash, wipes out that first position of the original bank, and now they own cash, and then they're just getting $1,000.
Right.
Is there a way for them to come in and assume the original?
Sort of, but I think...
And I use the word assume deliberately?
Yeah, right. So assuming... So if you're using the word assuming deliberately, no, you're not going to typically be able to assume that underlying mortgage to the bank, right? I think that that's a valid thought process that you can have solutions to, but I think is a little bit more advanced than I'd care to get into for today, right? Because we want to get kind of the
Did y'all
basics
hear
out
that?
there.
Here first. Ryan came up with an advanced thought.
It is advanced because just like any niche, one of the things that you'll find is every niche has a million creative ways to make money in it, right? Every niche, you're just like, oh my gosh, I never thought about doing it like that. Or, oh my gosh, if I change this by 0.5%, I'm actually gonna make $100,000 more. There's all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what we wanna do is we wanna teach the basics here. We wanna get you a foundation to understand what the heck people are talking about.
Real quick, because Hazel just asked an obvious question that I should have asked, so I apologize. The $29,000, where did that come from?
That, one of the jokes that I'll make sometimes about, hey, Grant, what do you do? I print money. Right? What we do is we make up a number, we tell somebody that that's what they owe us, and now that's the money that is owed to us, right? That $29,000 is the difference between the mortgage that is owed to us by our buyer and the mortgage that we owe to our bank or private lender or whoever. So if you look back at our drawing here, we had $90,000 that we owe to the bank, but our buyer owes us $119,000. Y'all see that? So we've got 119 right here. We've got 90 right here. The difference there is this $29,000.
And we talked about earlier, the only way you're going to get that money is if The only way you're going to get that is
That
if
full amount.
if Joe, a homeowner, refinances or comes into money and pays you off, or if you sell the note.
Right. And so to get into that's that side of things of selling this note, getting back to the example of if you sell that note to somebody, again, it takes you out of the equation. Them buying that note is also going to take this bank out of the equation. It's going to pay them off. And then from that point on, Mr. Note Buyer right here owns that note because you've transferred you've transferred that note to them, and now Joe Homeowner is just paying Mr. Note Buyer every month.
Right.
So, Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and again, I know this is probably too advanced for this conversation, but oftentimes on Propelio TV, we like to talk about how real estate is, a lot of ways, is the wild, wild west, and you can get creative. There's no law. Well, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an attorney.
Are we a CPA?
We're not a CPA. We're not an attorney. We're not financial planners. But just to show you how goofy this stuff can be is, so your note from Joe Homeowner is 9.5%. Your note to the bank is 4.5%. There's nothing that says you can't sell 8% of that to the new guy and retain 1.5%.
Depending. There actually is something that says that you can't do that legally, but but you can do it still through creative means.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, right. That is one of the advanced creative ways. It's called a partial note, right? You can't sell a partial interest in a note because then the SEC gets involved, but you can sell like the next amount of payments. You can sell your next 100 payments or your next however many payments to get it that way. But that, again, that's an advanced strategy. Let's get.
I was referring to Puerto Rico. That's how we do it. No. I'm just kidding.
Which is still a.
I'm
anyway.
just saying is the point being is even in this, which is so straight up and down of obvious, there's creative ways to make additional monies.
Correct. So let's get back to this calculator and look at how a note buyer is going to look at this. So again, I'm going to rephrase what I said a second ago. If I've got $119,000 on the market and it's making $1,000 a month for the next 30 years, that means I'm getting a 9.5% yield. Now, note buyers typically want 12 or 13% yields. So the question that gets asked over and over again is, how do I know what kind of discount I have to take on my note?
Right, because this is an example, we're talking about 9.5 yield, and if they're wanting to get 12, you have to creatively structure it to where now they're making 12 or 13.
Exactly. So if I'm a note buyer, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, if I buy this note, is their payment going to change? Like if I buy this note, is the homeowner's payment? No. Homeowner's payment is not going to change.
They're locked in for 30 years.
Is their number of years going to change? No. But what we need to see is that, okay, so they're going to make that amount of payments for the next X amount of years. That can't change. But what I can do is buy this note from you, the investor, but I want a 13 or a 12% yield. Okay? So now, like I said in this calculator, these top 5 buttons, we put in 4 of them, it will solve for the 5th. So what I know is I know that there's going to be 360 payments. I know that I want a 12% yield, so I'm going to put that in there. I do not know what the principal value is, and I know that the payment is $1,000. So now I'm going to solve for that principal value. Well, that means if I want $1,000 a month for the next 30 years to give me a 12% yield, that means that I will have $97,000 out on the market.
And going back to the spread, we talked about 29 equity. Depending on what the payoff would be, you're only looking at a $7,000 gain.
Right, correct. From selling this particular note at this particular rate. Okay, so that's why again I phrased this top row, and forgive me for repeating this too much, but I tend to feel when I am teaching this that people benefit from hearing this over and over again when I say, in order for me to know that $1,000 a month for the next 30 years is going to net me a 12% yield, that means I can only have $97,000 on the market. In other words, $97,000 on the market, making $1,000 a month for 30 years is going to net a 12% yield. So when you're selling the note to a note buyer, your benefit, your most money that you will make is if your note buyer has a lower yield requirement. Okay? The lower internal yield requirement that your buyer has, the more money they will be willing to give you for your mortgage.
So just to bring it back to the world I know, like if a wholesaler's talking to me and I'm talking to a wholesaler and we're like, hey, what do you buy at? I buy at 75% minus repairs. That type of conversation is a tried and true conversation that every investor's had. In the note world, is it very similar in like, well, what yield do you buy?
It is. That's exactly what I asked.
You throw that out there, and then they immediately know that you know what the hell you're talking about.
And you kind of get some shifty pants whenever you ask that question sometimes, because they don't want to give up their, you know what I mean?
Their
it's
number.
like, yeah, it's like, so, okay, what yield are you buying at? well, it kind of depends on the blah, 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 blah. But when you get good note buyers that you start to learn their yield requirements, that's where you benefit from that. So there's two different ways you can ask that question. I know you've got something queued up, but I want to respond to this. There's two different ways you can ask that question. What's your yield requirement? What's your internal yield requirement? If they up and tell you, awesome. If they don't, you can say, okay, well, what are you typically buying at percentage-wise? Then it becomes a very similar conversation to I buy at 75%.
Yeah.
Because the unpaid principal balance, the UPB, key word here, UPB, you're going to see that's an abbreviation very much used in the note world. The UPB is what everything is based off of. In this case, you have a UPB with Joe Homeowner of $119,000. So while we say, what percentage of ARV do you buy at? A note buyer is what percentage of the UPB would you buy at? Okay, so of the unpaid principal balance, what percentage are you buying at? Most note buyers are in that 75 to 82, 85% range,
right,
just like we are in buying properties. But the good ones, the ones that you really want on your side, are the one, like when I sell my notes, I get 95, 96% UPB, which is ridiculous, okay? Anywhere from 90 to 96, I should say. I've sold some 92, 93, that kind of thing. But that's going to be oftentimes the offer that you're presented with is that they will say, they're going to run their calculator in the background. And they're going to say, okay, I want a 12 yield. That means it's 97,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 97,000 divided by 119,000, which means that we are buying at 82% UPB. So they're going to send you the offer and they're going to say, I will buy your note at 82% UPB. They're not going to say, I will buy your note at a 12 yield.
And that's where my comment was, because I've never heard the commentary of what yield are you buying at. It's always what discount are you buying at.
Right, exactly. Which is kind of that's the result. What I try to ask for is the symptom. I want to know what their yield requirements are. If I can get that out of them, all the better. Right, my yield requirements, and so here's another great example. So the internal yield requirement for my note buyers, my best note buyers, is like 8. Okay, so if we ran that here, an 8% yield, that means that if I have $1,000 coming in for 30 years and I need it to be making me 8%, that means I could have $136,000 out on the market. So technically, they could buy that note that I only owe, that Joe Homeowner only owes me $119. They could buy that note for me for $136,000, but that's never going to happen.
And real quick before we take a break, because we are flying through, I can't believe it's already
just
30
looked down, I was like,
minutes into it. Because we're talking about present value, we're talking about monthly payments. Real quick, because we haven't talked about total value. Now I forgot the language it's supposed to be. It's not total value, but like the life.
What would you make?
Yeah, because again, if this note's 100, the example we were using before, the 119,000, you're not making 119,000.
Right,
you're making like
way more.
$20 million off this thing.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. So and it begs the question of, and I know there's never a real answer to it of why would somebody
how do you
give
decide
up?
to sell
why
a
would you
note?
sell the note?
Yeah.
But
I think that's a great topic to get in after the break.
So let's take a quick break.
Put questions.
Quick questions. I know we got a couple lining up, and we'll get to those here shortly. So stick around. We'll be right back, and take a break. And we're back. Today on Guarantee Something, we are talking about all things notes, creating notes, selling notes, what are notes. Before we get back to the topic of the conversation, before we get to the questions, real quick, Propelio.com. What is Propelio.com? We're simply software tools for real estate investors. So if you need access to true MLS comps, if you need off-market lead lists, and you need an investor-friendly website, check out Propelio.com. Do me a favor, if you like what you're seeing with all this free to you content, because it's not free to us, it's the time that we put to it, check out Propelio.com. 7-day free trial, no credit card. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Also, subtle plug, Propelio Academy, propelio.com/academy. All this stuff we talk about in a daily basis is in a more classroom setting. That's a free resource for you to use. Check it out. It's one of those things I tell people, so I'm blue in the face, and it's like, you will thank me later, and we'll see. CreativeCashFlow.com is?
CreativeCashFlow.com. I mean, you want to buy more houses, and we help you do that. CreativeCashFlow.com is where the investor who wants more goes and gets it. My job is to help you get more houses. My job is to teach you different strategies and different ways to go out there and be successful in this business. So if you are interested in learning more and you like my teaching style and you want more of an A to Z, check out CreativeCashFlow.com. And it's funny, I'll be, and also every Monday night I do a live Q&A for all my subscribers, which is a great opportunity to really pick my brain about anything you want. The funny thing is, I'll be an open book here. It's $650 right now. I've done some research, and kind of being more people will buy it from me if I raise the price to $997, which is kind of silly. So I'm letting you guys know now I'm raising the price to $997 this week on Friday. So if you are interested, get in now before I raise that price, and it's a lifetime membership, and everything else coming out in the future will be yours, as well as that Q&A every week.
And finally, if this is the first time you're watching this, listening to this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you turn on the notifications, YouTube, podcast, and Facebook.
All that good stuff.
So before we get back into, let's hit some of these questions. Matt Smith, why is note buying good? I would assume it'd be better to be the seller of the notes.
Not necessarily. So note buying can do really well for you. I mean, Eddie Speed has done tens of thousands of note purchases in his career, and he's made tons of money in it, and he's teaching other people how to do the same. Note purchasing, I mean, for exactly this reason. I was just showing you, hey, if you want to make 12, 13% yields on your money, you can buy notes at a discount and make 12, 13% yields on your money. And
versus the 0.0000001% out of a bank.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so if you've got cash that you want to deploy and you need to get that certain yield, this is the kind of job that you can do from behind your computer screen. Note purchases are purely running numbers on a spreadsheet and then buying and sitting back for the most part, right? So that's why note buyers do it. It makes a lot of sense for them. It's a good way to just sit at your computer and you can buy all around the nation. You never have to look at the house. You never have to talk to sellers. It's a purely numbers game, and goes from there. Selling the note, obviously, we make a lot of money selling the note. It's a very great symbiotic relationship between the note buyer and the note seller.
I would assume it's very similar to the wholesaler and the flipper,
yeah,
where the wholesaler is the one that's doing all the marketing, they're doing all the negotiating, and they're doing all the talking to sellers, where a flipper is just like, I just want to swing a hammer and build a house.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with sellers. Just give me, if the numbers work, let's go, move forward. Same thing with the note buyers. Yeah. They're never having to touch creating notes. They're never having to deal with any people. They're just creating or buying
and
the
I'm
notes.
simplifying it by saying you never have to go out of the house and stuff like that. But, you know, it is what it is. It's a good way to make
So,
money.
Rudy Willis out of San Francisco,
Hey,
thank you
Rudy.
for watching.
I met Rudy at the Note Expo of Eddie Speed's.
Oh, nice. Well, I love people that are for San Francisco. It's great. He was pointing out the phrase is discount to yield when we were talking about earlier.
Okay. Discount to yield.
In quotations.
Okay.
Brady Durr from YouTube. Shifty pant because note investors are drunk on yields.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's similar to like if a wholesaler asks you what percentage do you buy at, do you really tell them I can buy it up to 82%? Or you're like, well, I want to get my deals at 70. You know what I mean? It's like it's the same shifty pants.
So, and then Matt Smith, he was a little confused on what a yield is. So maybe I know you said it twice, but maybe go a little bit more detail if you can.
Yield in its simplest form is what is your return on investment, right? What is the return on the investment you're getting? It's in a numerical form as a percentage of the money that you have on the market. You know, here again, to simplify it down, if I say that I have $136,000, let's do this. Let me put some simple numbers on here. So if I have a $100,000 mortgage with an 8% yield, that's $733 a month. That means that this year I'm going to make 8% on that $100,000. Well, next year, at the end of the year, I'm still going to have a balance of $99,000. That year, I'm going to make 8% on that $99,000. The year after that, we're going to pay a balance of $98,000. We're going to make 8% on $98,000 that year. That is your return on investment, essentially, on the capital that you have out there.
And Matt, if you need more details, just let us know.
Yeah.
Brady, some of the P&I is return of investment, some is return on investment. Do you have a formula that tracks true ROI? I don't know why I said it like it. True ROI, which is the interest payment part. Do you even bother tracking the returns only based on the interest paid?
Yeah, so the what I actually just said actually answers that, right?
Okay.
So the yield, that interest number, that is the interest that you're making on your principal. Because like Brady points out, part of our payment, each payment, what you'll see here is the first payment, we've got the mark of the beast in interest, and we've got $67 coming back in principal, okay? When we track the amount of interest we make that year, it's going to be 8% of the principal that we had out on the market at the beginning of that year. So that's kind of how that ROI, and I might be proven wrong. This is not something, I'll be completely honest, this is not something I've spent my life in trying to figure out that particular section of it. So if there's something that I've misspoken, please correct me. But I'm confident enough to have said that.
Jessica Buchanan, you can buy notes with your self-directed IRA, question mark. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely you can. You can do a lot of stuff with your self-directed IRA, including lend it to me to go put into real assets. That being said, if you are watching and you do have a self-directed IRA, please message me in the, just through Facebook. We always have more opportunities for getting capital deployed, and you can absolutely use that.
Trey, that's your next slide you need to build of, I want your money. Instead of the golden nugget, it's I want your money. Give me that money.
But again, it's a symbiotic relationship. If you want to be sitting behind a computer screen and not have to deal with the real estate but still make yields that you want to make on your money, one way to do that is to invest it through somebody like myself or an active real estate investor who deals with all of the garbage, and then you make your money on it. It's a very similar way to go about doing that. And a great option. And actually, we'll do an episode on private money too.
We have a couple comments here. Brady, true arbitrage, the interest is a good business model.
Yeah, so arbitrage, what he's referring to is basically what we have in our drawing here in saying, hey, look, I'm paying 4.5%, but I'm charging 9.5%. We're paying 4.5% on $90,000, and then we're charging somebody 9.5% on that $90,000. It's not even ours. We are arbitraging. We are leveraging money that's not even ours and making money off of it by having somebody pay us more interest on that dollar amount.
And then one more question for Matt, and then we'll get back to the topic, which I think we're talking about notes. What if you buy a note where the house is all busted up? I assume you would have to do some kind of research on the home.
So one of the factors that does go into note buyers, and this is why I corrected myself a second ago in saying I don't want to, I'm oversimplifying by saying you never have to pay attention to the house or the property, is you should look at the asset. You should look at what is that asset's value and what is your money LTV going to be, right? If you're buying that. So the reason why I said nobody's ever going to buy that $119,000 note for $139,000 from us is because that house is probably only worth $130,000. They're not going to have $139,000 leveraged on a property that's only worth $130,000. They need a discount just like anybody else. So your discounts reflect not only the yield percentages that you need, but also the strength of the paper. And what I mean by that is, did the buyer get run through an RMLO? Was it properly originated? If it was not properly originated, this is one of the big reasons why I encourage you guys to look at RMLO and use RMLOs, is that if you get an RMLO, a good RMLO paperwork underwriting package on your mortgage, that's when you can get those 93 to 95%.
And since we are talking about selling notes, what do you see like most buyers out there? What kind of seasoning do they require?
That's
is it
a great
3 month,
question.
9 month, 2 year?
Yeah,
like what are they looking for?
Yeah, so just to put an end cap on the RMLO speech for a second,
sorry.
when you need to have an underwriting package that shows that this is a strong mortgage and a strong investment for that note buyer. And part of what goes into strength of investment is the money that they have on the market versus the asset that it is backed by. If it is a crap house that is torn to shreds and it's only worth $100, they're not going to buy that 119 note from you for 110. Right? They are not going to over leverage themselves. So strength of paper, strength of asset do play into that, and that goes into the due diligence of the note buyer.
And just to further cap the RMLO talk, because I think there's a lot of confusion about RMLOs. RMLOs. You know, basically all they're doing is because you're telling them, hey, this is the rate I want, this is
Right.
what I want, is this potential person, this potential buyer, are they a good fit for my property? At the end of the day, like, it's your property. If you want to sell them,
Exactly.
you can still sell to them. The
You
problem, though,
decide.
not the problem, but the RMLO, what they're there for is to strengthen your paper.
Mm-hmm.
They're also there to potentially prevent any kind of legal action in the
Yeah,
future,
they're
where if you're in front of a judge saying, hey, how dare you what's it called? Like
High priced mortgage.
like high price mortgage, or what is it called when the lending, like
Predatory
lending. It's like, look, I've got a third party RMLO said this was an okay thing.
Right.
You know,
and let's be clear to that point, the RMLO does not approve your buyer, you approve your buyer.
Right.
The RMLO's job is to hand you a package of papers that say, if you approve this borrower, you will have a qualified mortgage, which is what gives you all the court protections.
Right.
And
So-
it will make it to where your paper, your note, is worth more on the secondary market.
in my brain, to simplify what an RMLO does is it says, hey, you most likely are not going to get sued. And if you do get sued, you're going to win because the judge is going to be on your side. And two, strengthen the paper for when you do want to sell it later.
Right, absolutely. Even if you don't qualify, because Safe Act says you've got to do 5 or more before you have to have a licensed individual, even if you're underneath that 5 mark, get the RMLO, because you never know if you're going to sell that note. Your note buyer wants to see the RMLO package, and your buyer pays for it anyway. What was that other question, though, that you had? Seasoning. So that's a great question. So what we've looked at here is we created a note, and you saw me using 360 the whole time. We created a 30-year note, and then we sold the next 30 years of payments. That's not typical. Note buyers, part of their due diligence, part of having that asset protected, having their investment protected, is they want to see typically a minimum of 6 on-time payments before they'll even consider buying that note from you. And to get the most, you need 12 months of seasoning, on-time payments. That's what seasoning is showing that your buyer is able to afford the payments that they got into. This only strengthens your paper. It only strengthens the position to show, hey, look, this is a good investment for you. If you give me $97,000, you will get, with a high probability of confidence, $1,000 a month for this next 29 years.
So in talks of seasoning, but also if you've been watching all the Grant Teach Me Somethings, you've heard us talk about how the most money you're going to make is the first year and a half because of the way interest is done. Is there a sweet spot of, okay, I've made the most money I can make off this note, 12 months, 13 months, 14, this is the time to sell.
Yeah.
Is there a sweet spot?
There probably is, but I have not dived into that grade of detail.
Jumped.
So this is I think a good opportunity to give a lesson, right? There probably is something that is a sweet spot there. We're talking about vertical,
13.7 months.
right? We're talking about vertical integration. We're talking about making the most money we can off of each asset that we have. And my philosophy is you should know how to make money on single-family assets, whether that is wholesaling, fix and flipping, renting, doing wraparound mortgages, owner financing, selling notes. I have a way to make money at every stage of the game on that mortgage, or I'm sorry, on that house, on that single family asset, okay? But I, who have done tons of deals, have not taken the time to dive so deep into every single strategy, because you should have strategies that you are particularly strong in, because everything takes an investment in time. Everything takes an investment of mental capacity and capital that you have on that, and you should spend that wisely. So be a great wholesaler that knows how to take down an owner financed deal. Be a great owner financing person that knows how to sell the note or wholesale a deal, right? Have your specialty, but then on the outskirts, know how to recognize a situation that's good for a different. So in that wholesaler example, if I'm a wholesaler, I'm a great wholesaler, but I recognize that this person owes 82% on their house and is willing to give it to me and isn't behind on payments, I recognize that's a great subject to possibility. So even though I might not know how to do everything, I might reach out to a Grant or a Tang or somebody like that knows how to do this and JV with them. Similarly here, I know how to recognize a note sale. I know how to make money on that note sale. Have I gotten as deep as that well goes in note sales? No. And I don't think I have to. It's ultimately something that's nice that will come with experience, but what you can get is analysis paralysis if you start trying to know every deep dive detail about every single thing. And what's going to happen, and I'll finish with this, what's going to happen is you will get 2 years down the line, you will learn a new part of that strategy, and you will say, holy crap, if I had only known this 2 years ago, I could have made so much more money. But let's be realistic. You only have 24 hours in the day, and you need to spend that capital wisely, right? And if you spend all of it learning, you're never doing, then you make $0 versus having made some dollars and then learn how to make more dollars later.
Yeah, and there's so many reactions to that. One is you just proven why networking is so important, why real estate is watching these videos, doing the academy, learning, reading books. Yes, very important, but more important is going out and meeting a Grant, meeting a Daniel, meeting a Ryan, meeting a Tank, meeting whoever, and find people who they are. Second to that is the person that's going to go door knock and work their ass off, not having a clue what they're doing, is better off than the person that knows everything about this business sitting at their desk.
Yeah, absolutely. My bit of advice to people on that front is I want every morning, part of your morning routine should be, and if you need to print this out and put this on your computer screen or something like that so that it's hitting you in the face, do that. Ask yourself this question. What percentage of yesterday did I do that put me in front of somebody who can sign a piece of paper that makes me money?
Yeah, that's a great quote. We should probably put that out somewhere. The third thing I wanted to point out was, and I don't know if this is a Daniel quote or Daniel was re-quoting somebody else. I just know it wasn't me. And that's the simple concept of, wait for it, shit.
What an excellent quote. Wait for it, shit. That is an excellent. I'm going to put that out on my desktop.
No, a good investor knows knows the strategy going into the deal. A great investor will take the deal down and then figure out what the hell they're doing.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah.
So it's like, hey, I know what my exit strategy is. Okay, let's acquire.
The most successful people I know are that way.
project.
The most successful people I know are the ones who jump and wait for the net to appear.
Yeah, they sign the contract, then they go, okay, now I know what I'm
Right.
do.
So, so on these notes purchases, we've talked about a lot of different factors that go into a note sale, right? One of the factors that we wanted to get to is let's evaluate what we could have made, and let's analyze that versus doing the note sale. And let's finish up today. Oh, Jesus, sorry. Let's finish up today talking about at what point in time is that a good decision for us, right? How do you make that decision, okay? So I'll try to blow through this fairly quickly, but let's do some basic numbers here, okay? So I'm going to look at these two mortgages that we had, all right? On one hand, we have outgoing funds of $90,000 at 4.5% for 300 months. Okay. On the other hand, we have coming in $119,000 at 9.5% for 360 months. This is what we initially set up on this picture, where we were paying debt of $90,000. Actually, for 16 years. I'm sorry, I'll correct that. For 16 years, but we're getting debt for 30 years. So let me correct this to...
And let me say my catchphrase, which is 119 is more than 90.
It is, yes. I love that.
I know you.
Okay, for 16 years. Okay, so let's run these numbers. Our debt that we will pay on this deal, and I'm gonna just run the basic numbers here, is, what did I say, $90,000?
Yes, sir.
$587 a month, which was basically $600 a month. I'm doing rough numbers. Total paid, what you will see, the third blue number from the top says total paid. That includes all the interest and all the principal that we will pay over the next 228 months is $134,000. So I'm going to put that number right here for us. Total is $134,000.
think that's supposed to be a K.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a K. And then what we look at is our total income. So coming in, we had $119,000 for 30 years at 9.5%, which means that we are total receipts of $360,000.
Which is more.
Which I was going to ask you, what is that?
And then this begs the question of, in the example before, you never know why you need to sell, but if you were to sell that note at the example earlier, which would be $7,000, you're literally giving up $226,000 of potential revenue.
Right.
Obviously, that's a 30-year commitment, but it's you never know what's going on. Did you have a heart attack? Did you do this? Do you need to go on vacation? Do you need to get married and have to buy a ring? I don't know.
This number right here is why we do this business. People, we mentioned arbitrage. People don't understand the power of interest.
Right.
In this loan, we were making $226,000 on cash flow, plus $10,000, $15,000 of a down payment on an asset that we only had $29,000 worth of equity on.
Right.
Time value of money factors into that. Okay, take off 2/3 of it. You're still making a ton of money on this deal, right? Now, the question becomes, why would I ever choose to sell this note? And the answer is, hey man, you can't go out and buy a $20,000 car with, well, I guess you could because of the cash flow. What's another example? There are things that you need money for right now. Groceries. You need money for emergency medical bills. You need money for car repairs, whatever that is. If you hit a spot, you have a piggy bank here that you can capitalize on. So how do you decide in your portfolio which of these notes are going to be the ones that you sell?
And it's the age-old question of today money versus tomorrow money. Today money is 10 grand. Tomorrow money is 200,000.
So I have a rule of thumb, and we'll do an episode on rules of thumb eventually here. I think I did one last season as well. My rule of thumb is I want a minimum of $150 a month in cash flow when I'm doing a wrap, okay? But it's a rule of thumb because it's made to be broken. What happens if, and this is a very real, very possible situation, what happens if you run into a deal where you only have $80 in cash flow, but you've got $80,000 in equity? That can happen. It's odd, but it can happen. So let's look at a, how would I illustrate that? So if we've got a $200,000 loan, I think I need to put a bigger number here for this to work. For 30 years, that's $1,681. If I have a mortgage that I'm paying of $1,650, and let's make an extreme example. That doesn't work. Shoot. Well, I can't think of an example right now, but I've got plenty of properties.
It works, people.
It does.
It works.
I should have a built-in example for this, but I have plenty of properties where this is the case, where I have $50,000, $60,000 in equity, but we're only getting like $50, $60 in cash flow. Well, those are nice piggy banks. So when I'm going through and I need cash, for instance, I mentioned that big software that we bought, right? So we've got a $20,000 piece of software that we run our servicing through. It's expensive. Well, where did I get 20 grand from? Is I looked through my notes and I started from my bottom of the barrel cash flows. And I sold a note where I was making $40 a month to get $30,000 of a profit on that note. Okay? So if you factor that out in one sense, if I got $30,000 net profit in my bank account from selling that note, and I was only making $40 a month, it's kind of like 750 months worth of income there.
Right.
Now the reason, part of why we're making $40 a month now, is that eventually the underlying lien would drop off, and we would have been making a bunch more. Blah 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 blah. You can keep going down a million different roads to convince yourself not to do something. Because you can say, well, blah, blah, blah. This would happen and that. Well, you know what? Actually, do we have any questions? I'm going to look something up.
No, you're good. Keep going. But I will say, though, there's got to be, going on this example of massive equity spreads, there's got to be examples where you actually have negative cash flow, but it's worthwhile to pursue it just because of that equity capture.
Right.
Is that fair to assume?
It could be. It could be. It's not typical, but it could be. Am I already? Okay,
I hope you're not showing anything secret.
I know. I hope so too. Okay, so this is my master spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet that we track things in. So
boom, you got a negative spread right there.
So here we go. I've got a negative spread on a property. That deal kind of sucks for me right now, but eventually it will make money because of what we have coming down the road. Anyway, sometimes you have deals that kind of suck for you. But let's look at Armstrong, and that one will eventually, pay off well for us.
It's a big ass spreadsheet.
I know, right? So if we look at this deal, and we look at what am I trying to show you here? If we look at what I'm trying to show you is how I actually evaluate some of my deals. So here we go, perfect, Armstrong. I have a year-end equity spread on this deal of $47,000. Okay, this one particular deal, I've got $47,000 worth of equity in. If I was to sell that note for 95%, that would mean that I would net $41,000 from selling that note. But if I look at my cash flow, I'm making $650 a month on that deal.
Right.
So I have a note sale reasoning field in my spreadsheet so that I don't have to reevaluate this. If I'm ever going through my notes and I'm evaluating if I want to sell them, I make a little note to myself of whether or not I want to sell it and why that is. But this one says, hey, the cash flow is too good and it's a non-owner occupied. So that means that I can foreclose on it much more simply. I'm making a ton of money every month. It doesn't really make sense to give that up.
Yeah, and one thing I do like about you opening this up for like 2 seconds is the fact that even though you're, an expert and know what the hell you're doing, you still have some duds.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this business, you're going to have duds. And like we were opened up, talked about before we even started the show is grass is greener somewhere else, and you just got to keep the course and keep driving through. And, shit happens at times, and not everything's a winner, and you just got to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these things, and that's one of the brilliant parts about having notes that last for a long time, is because eventually those duds do end up making you money. That's one of the reasons why I like owner financing, is because you may get into something that gets screwed up for one reason or another. But down the line, like I think this one on Bluebird has a negative equity spread, but it's got a way shorter amort, which means that on the back end I'm going to make a ton of money, and I could afford to float this dud for a little while because it's going to make me money eventually.
Yeah, so as we wrap up all of this, I think that the big thing is, one, don't be scared of notes, but if you have an opportunity to possibly create a note, find yourself a Grant Kemp, find yourself a Kristen Gertz, a Scott Carson, or whoever, and be like, look, I have this potential deal, JV with me so
Right.
I can learn how to do this. Because, at any time, whether I use you as a mentor or a coach or whatever, that's fine. But if you've got a deal on the table that you could JV with somebody, I promise you, people are always willing to teach if they've got skin in the game.
Worth its weight in gold to have a deal on the table.
Yeah.
And then if you've got notes that you want to sell, like I said, I can broker that note for you with my note buyers that have low yield requirements, and we can get you. Typically, I get the person that I'm brokering the note for between 87 and 93%. I keep about 1.5 points for brokering the deal. I'm very open book there. I'll keep 1.5 points to maybe 3% if I'm able to get a bigger back end to where you're still getting 90, 92%. I think that's fair for everybody, right?
Yeah. So as we wrap up, if you're watching this on a replay and you have questions, keep those questions coming. That's part of the reason we do this live on YouTube and Facebook is so you do have the ability to reach out to Grant. If you hit him in the DMs, he may never see it, but if you ask a question on the comment section, he's going to see it. He's going to answer those questions.
And tag me in it. If you've got a question, tag my name, Grant Kemp, so that I can find it.
Right. But I think the overall messaging here is don't be scared of notes. There's a lot to be made there. It is just another tool in your tool belt. Everything about real estate is adding tools to your tool belt and getting creative. That being said, CreativeCashFlow.com is a who?
CreativeCashFlow.com, where investors who want more get it. Again, I do personal mentoring. I've got an online academy, and I do a weekly Q&A where I answer all of your questions. My job is to help you buy more houses and be more profitable. So if you're interested in how I teach, please, I could use your support, honestly. I mean, letting people know that this is what we're doing. Creative Cash Flow is giving real, actionable information. We are not just rah-rah from somebody who's never done it before. I've spent years getting all of this knowledge that is not available to you in other means online. I know because I've looked for it when I was getting in, and now we're making that available to you. So check out CreativeCashFlow.com, join, and then we will get you where you want to go.
And as far as Propelio.com, what we're looking for, what we're really focused on now is MLS expansion. So if you have brokers throughout the country that are investor friendly and want to do more business with investors, please make a connection with myself. My email is Ryan, R-Y-A-N, @Propelio.com. Would love to talk to brokers throughout the country to expand Propelio into your market. If we're not in your market at the moment, like Rusty out in San Francisco, if you've got a broker, if you're a broker yourself, hit me up and let's see how we can partner. Additionally, if you like what you're seeing, please like, subscribe. If you want more detailed information, like what Grant just dropped here today, check out the Propelio Academy, Propelio.com/academy.
Phenomenal
where
resource.
all this stuff is free to you, and it's classroom setting. And trust me, you'll want to watch the show episodes, the courses, the segments, whatever you want to call them, over and over and over. And then lastly, if you do like what you see and you do like what we're doing here, check out Propelio.com and actually what we do for a living. We're a software company for real estate investors. We provide you with access to MLS comps, access to off-market lead lists, and an investor-friendly website. 7-day free trial and 0 credit cards. So if you've never checked us out, check us out. Tell me what you think. But anyway, message today, don't be scared of notes.
Yeah.
You good?
I am good. Thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for all the support.
Trey, take us out.